Roland Waters sat at the bar, nursing his rum and coke, patiently waiting for a message to come across his phone. As he sipped his drink, he thought about the events that led him to this point in his life. Born 36 years ago in Anchorage, Alaska, he married Linda, his high school sweetheart, right after graduation. He went to work on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline and spent several weeks at a time going from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez, fixing various problems as they arose. He came home one day after spending a grueling 6 weeks on the road to find his wife in bed with not one but two of his former classmates. After protestations that it really didn't mean anything and it was only intimacy, he divorced her and joined the Army to get as far away from the situation as he could. He eventually met and married his second wife, Melissa, while stationed at Fort Bliss, Texas. He thought he had hit the jackpot, but learned just the opposite after returning from a 12-month deployment to Iraq. He found her having intimacy with another soldier on the base and divorced her. That marriage lasted a little less than 2 years, about the same time as his marriage to Linda. He threw himself into his work and became the best soldier he could. He had one job: kill the enemy, and he became damn good at it. After his stint in the Army, he was recruited as a freelancer, working for various interests in places like Africa and the Middle East. He also worked in Myanmar, helping an ethnic minority against a brutal regime. In short, he had become a soldier of fortune, a mercenary, and a highly paid and sought-out one at that. His ruthlessness, efficiency, and brutality in the field were just a few of the things that attracted potential clients. Part of what set Roland apart from the other contractors was the fact that he chose his clients with care. He refused to work for anyone who dealt with drugs or human trafficking, for example. Several times he took lower-paying jobs simply because he agreed with his benefactor's cause. Another thing that set him apart from the others was his choice of weapon. While others opted for more modern hardware, he used an old World War II vintage Thompson submachine gun, or SMG, that he bought from a somewhat shady character who claimed it had been used by another mercenary in the Congo War of the 1960s. "Legend has it Patty Hearst bought this gun after she heard it," the man said. Roland called bull on that claim. He was familiar with the old song. Still, the weapon seemed to call out to him, and it felt good in his hands. It was almost as if they were made to be together. The weapon was in excellent shape and came complete with 2 large magazines and a drum that held 100.45 caliber ACP pistol rounds. It only had an effective firing range of about 150 meters, but the trench broom, as it had been called, was deadly, and it suited him just fine. He especially liked that it was designed to be fired from the hip. It cost him a pretty penny, to be sure, but it was deadly at close range and very reliable. After a decade of working as a mercenary, he tired of the constant fighting and came back home, hoping to put his past behind him and start a family. He became a freelance consultant for a private security company and settled down. He met his current wife, Susan, at a social event where he had been hired to organize security. Susan was an attorney for the firm of Freeman and Douglas. He literally bumped into her at the event as she was making her way to the bar. He caught her as she stumbled, preventing her from falling to the hard floor. He thought nothing of it at the time, but Susan was instantly taken with the tall, quiet, and well-built man with the ragged scar across his face. They spent a lot of time talking that night and began dating. He was very careful not to reveal too much of his background, only telling her that he worked overseas as a contractor after his 4-year stint in the Army. He became very creative when she asked about the scars that dotted his body. And he certainly never told her about his secret overseas accounts. He had already been burned twice and wasn't about to go through that again. They fell in love and married a year after they first met, and Roland thought he had finally found his one true soulmate. At first, things were great between the two. They enjoyed each other's bodies several times a week, and they got along well. Sure, they had their disagreements, like every married couple does, but they worked through them. They were even talking about having children and bought a 2-story, 3-bedroom house in a nice suburban neighborhood. Then, things started going off the rails. Susan began spending more time at the office working on various cases and going out for drinks with the girls and other co-workers. This raised a few red flags, but then came the summer party her firm put on. He went with Susan as he always did, but he knew there would be problems the instant he walked in. Susan introduced him to her co-workers as she always did, but then she introduced him to the newest attorney in the firm, Michael Van Owen. For a moment, Roland experienced a bout of déjà vu. He hoped this wasn't the same Van Owen he knew from Africa, but as he looked at the tall man with the chiseled face, his hopes were dashed. It was the same man, a man who once recruited him and fought with him, but became a turncoat after being offered more money, allegedly from a federal agency. Granted, that was several years ago, but Roland was not a man known for being very forgiving, and he never forgot a face. Roland came face to face with the man who once tried to kill him. Van Owen extended his hand, a smirk on his face, but Roland simply walked away. Susan ran after him, calling to him. "Roland, sweetie, what's wrong? Why were you so rude to Mike?" Roland couldn't tell Susan the whole story without revealing his true past. "I don't trust that man. Something about him bothers me. I'm sorry. I really can't explain." "Well, you're just going to have to get over it. Mike and I are working on several projects now, and we'll be spending a lot of time together. Now get it together and come join us at the table." "You're working with him?" Roland asked. Susan nodded her head. "Yes, we are. Come on, we need to get back to the party." Susan grabbed his hand and led him back to their table. He held her back for a moment. "I'm letting you know, Susan. You need to be careful of him," he said. "Don't worry, I'll be careful. Now come on, you're embarrassing me." He let her lead him back to the table where they sat down. Van Owen sat across from them, eyeing Roland carefully. Maybe, Roland thought, he was worried that he might get outed. Susan went to another table to speak with some of her colleagues. Van Owen leaned over the table and looked Roland in the eye. "I hope you understand that what happened in Africa wasn't personal. It was just business. But now that I know Susan is your wife, it just became personal. Know this, I intend to do everything I can to take her from you. I should have hunted you down like the dog you are and killed you back in Africa," Roland said. "And I'm warning you, if you have intimacy with my wife, I will kill you." Van Owen laughed. "You're such a clueless romantic, Roland. You always were. I've already tasted your wife, and I intend to have her brains out right in front of you before it's over. Then I'll finish the contract on you. I'll bet she doesn't know about your past, does she? Who knows? Maybe I'll fill her in, but I'll call a truce for tonight, for old time's sake. I'm warning you, Van Owen, this won't end well for you. Let it go. Leave Susan out of it." Van Owen smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Susan came back to their table and looked at the two men. "I see you two are getting to know each other," she said. "Yes, we know exactly where we stand, don't we, Roland?" Van Owen asked. "Yes," Roland said in a neutral tone of voice. Susan looked back and forth between them, wondering what was going on between the two men. She also wondered if Mike had told Roland about their affair. She knew Roland wouldn't tolerate her infidelity, especially after what his previous wives had done to him. She sat down next to her husband, and the three of them ate their meals, Roland and Van Owen watching each other carefully the whole time. Susan felt as though she could cut the tension between them with a knife. After the meal and the obligatory speeches, Susan grabbed Roland's hand and dragged him to the dance floor. Roland held her tight, feeling her body close to his. Normally, he relished her closeness, but not this time. As they danced, he kept a close eye on Van Owen, who was also watching them. "What's going on, Roland? You feel tense, like a coiled snake. Talk to me." "How well do you know Van Owen?" he asked. "We've been working together on some projects. Why?" "You didn't answer my question. How well do you know him?" "What do you mean?" she asked. You know what I mean. Have you slept with him? She looked at him, shocked. Of course not. How could you ask such a thing? Let me rephrase that. Have you had intimacy with him? Her body flinched slightly after he asked, giving him his answer. I see. How long has it been going on? Roland, it doesn't mean anything, she replied. It means everything to me, Susan. You know what I've been through, and you know how I feel about infidelity. I won't stand for it. Tell me, dear wife, what do you know about your lover? Not much, she said. Roland noticed that she didn't deny the affair. He came to work for us about 6 months ago. He supposedly did contract work for a federal agency. Why? He's dangerous, and if you want to have any kind of a future with me, you'd better end it with him ASAP. She looked at him, wondering what was going through his mind. Is that a threat? She asked. I don't make threats. It's a warning, and you'd better take heed. Otherwise, it won't end well. What do you mean? She asked. Just trust me. It won't end well. For you, for him, and for us. You're scaring me, Roland, she said. You'd better be scared, he said. What aren't you telling me, Roland? What's going on? Really? She asked. I can't tell you. You'll just have to trust me. How long has it been going on between you two? Not long, she said, a tear falling down her face. Maybe a couple months. A couple months, I see. Are you in love with him? No, I only love you, she replied. You sure have a funny way of showing it, he said. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. It was just one of those things. I felt attracted to him and it just happened. Bull, Roland said calmly, causing her to flinch. You could have said no, but you didn't. Please believe me, I really do love you and I don't want to lose you. All right, then you won't have any problem ending it. Why don't you tell him to leave you alone right here and now in front of me? Okay, if that's what I have to do. It is. Let's go break it to him right now. If that's what you want, she said nervously. They walked off the dance floor and headed back to their table. Van Owen was standing, watching them approach. My wife has something she'd like to tell you, Van Owen, Roland said. Mike looked at Susan, who appeared scared. Mike, he knows. We can't see each other anymore. I'm a married woman and I want to stay that way. Van Owen nodded his head. I see, he said, looking at Roland. Well, I guess the better man won, again, he added, extending his hand. No hard feelings? Roland looked at Mike's extended hand, a frown on his face. Refusing to shake Mike's hand, he steered Susan away and led her to the exit. Are we leaving already? She asked. Yes, he said. When they got to their car, Roland surprised Susan again by inspecting the vehicle before getting inside. He even opened the trunk and the hood, looking for wires or anything else out of place. Satisfied that the car wasn't booby-trapped, he seated Susan and got inside. What was all that about? Susan asked. You can never be too careful. They rode home in silence. Roland was fuming and Susan was scared, not knowing what her husband was going to do. She hoped that her performance at the party convinced him enough to let her affair go, but she still had concerns. Looking at her husband, she suddenly didn't recognize him. It was like looking directly into the face of death itself. Are we okay? She asked, scared of what he might say. That's up to you. So long as you stay away from Van Owen, yes. In fact, I think you should resign and find another place to work. I can't do that. I'm working on some very sensitive projects right now, and if I'm successful, I might be made a partner in the firm. Roland looked at her. So you're telling me your job is more important than our marriage? No, it's just that I'm at a crucial point in my career and I can't afford to screw it up right now. You've already screwed up our marriage. My gut tells me I should kick your back to the curb, and I still might. If I find out that you're still screwing Van Owen, it's over. Understand? She nodded her head. I understand, but you need to tell me what's going on between you two. I already told you I can't reveal that. Let's just say we've dealt with each other before and leave it at that, okay? Susan nodded her head, but decided to confront Mike. Roland decided at that moment he would try to patch things up with Susan, but it would be a trust but verify situation. The first chance he got, he contacted an old friend who specialized in surveillance work. Bill Matthews had gotten in trouble with the law as a child, but those who knew him simply said he was an excitable boy. Bill wasn't quite as proficient with firearms as the others on his team, but he was the best reconnaissance and surveillance man Roland had ever met. He was also a good planner and could assess a situation within seconds. Roland often said he trusted Bill's guesses more than other people's so-called facts. "What? Van Owen's alive? Are you sure about that?" "Oh, yeah. And he's been screwing my wife. That son of a blip. What do you need from me? Whatever it is, I'll do it. Right now, I need surveillance, audio, video, the works. How much will you charge me for that?" "Hey, I owe you my life several times over. Consider it a favor." "Thanks, I appreciate that, but at least let me cover your expenses." "Buy me a beer when it's over, okay?" Bill replied. "Consider it done, my friend." "So what do you intend to do with them if they're still, involved?" Bill asked. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." It didn't take very long for Roland to get the evidence he needed. A week after speaking with Bill, he held a large manila envelope that contained pictures and a USB drive with several high-definition videos. That Friday, he sat at his kitchen table with the envelope, waiting for his wife to come home. His .45 caliber pistol also sat on the table. It was 6:30 p.m. when she opened the door and walked inside. She went into the kitchen and saw her husband sitting at the table with an envelope and a pistol in front of him. She instinctively knew that she had been caught. "Sit down, wife," Roland said in a neutral tone. She remained standing. "I said sit down," he thundered. She meekly pulled out a chair and sat down. "So you caught me," she said. Roland slowly nodded his head. "Do I need to show you the pictures? What about the video?" Her eyes opened wide. "You have video?" she asked. "Yes, in high definition. I must say, you should have become a porn star. You know what was worse than seeing you actually intimating with that piece of blip?" "No, Roland, I don't," she said quietly. "Hearing the two of you disrespect me," he said. Susan dropped her head, tears falling down her cheek. "Knock off the crying. You made me a promise and then you broke it. How could you do that to us? Have I been that bad a husband to you? Have I ever abused you or treated you badly?" "What do you think?" he asked rhetorically. She looked at him defiant. "Know this. That would be the biggest mistake you could ever make. I know all about you now. What was it they called you? Oh yes, Roland the Heartless Thompson Gunner. How many men have you killed in your career as a mercenary? You know all that will come out in the divorce. I also know that you're wanted in several countries." Roland chuckled. If the stupid blip knew that, he thought, she would also have known how he tended to destroy his enemies. She had no idea what she was messing with. First of all, that old name was from some song back in the 70s. It was headless, not heartless. As you can see, my head is still very much attached to my body and I hail from Alaska, not Norway. Second, I've done nothing illegal. At least not in the US, and the governments in those other countries have changed since I was last there, and we don't have any extradition treaties with them. Well, the IRS might be very interested in your offshore accounts. You know, the ones where all your money is hiding. I'm talking about the money you haven't paid any taxes on," she answered. Roland smiled again. "If you had taken the time to look, you would have known that those old accounts were set up by your lover a long time ago, and they're empty right now, have been for years." Her face went white as he continued. "That's right. Your lover is the one who first recruited me into the business." "Oh, he didn't tell you that, did he?" "I'll bet he also didn't tell you that he was right there with me, knee-deep in all the blood and gore for years. And I'll bet he never told you about the contract he was given to kill me." "What? That can't be true." "Oh, but it is, dear wife. He came very close to killing me too. I stopped him, though, and almost killed him, but he escaped. I never saw or heard from him again until the party. Imagine my surprise to see him there." "I don't believe you," she said. "Didn't you see the scar on his inner thigh? I gave him that scar when I shot him. I was aiming for his balls, but he zigged when I thought he was going to zag. It was just a flesh wound, but I'll bet it had to hurt. By the way, did he tell you that he intends to kill me as well?" "No, it can't be true," she replied. "Oh, but it is true, dear wife. And I know that he told you because I have it all on video. I also have your response. Would you like to see it? So what are you going to do? You still planning to go with him on your little cruise? You know which one I'm talking about, the cruise you two plan to take this weekend, while telling me you have a meeting with clients out of town." "So you know about that?" she asked. "As a matter of fact, I do. I've known for a while. I even took the liberty of packing your suitcase." "How did you know?" she asked. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that I do know." He didn't tell her that Bill would be on the cruise, keeping him informed of their activities. "Mike's coming here to pick me up this evening," she said. Roland shook his head. "I don't think so. In fact, if that man shows up here, I'll kill both of you where you stand and make it look like self-defense. You'd better call him right now and make other arrangements." "You wouldn't dare!" she hissed. Roland picked up the pistol. "You really want to try me? I didn't think so. Call your lover. Now!" He cocked his pistol to drive home the point. Susan pulled out her phone and dialed. "Put it on speakerphone," Roland commanded. She obeyed, and soon they both heard Mike pick up the phone. "Hey, baby, you ready for me to come pick you up?" "No, sweetie. I'll come to your place and we can go from there." "Aw, come on. We planned it this way." "No, sweetie," Roland roared. "She's coming to you, and I never want to see either of you again. If you step foot in my house, so help me God, I'll blow your brains out." "He means it," Susan said nervously. "Yeah, I do," Roland said. Okay, calm down. I'll stay here. Promise me you won't hurt her, Mike." "I won't hurt her so long as she leaves right now, and neither one of you cross my path ever again," Roland said. He looked at his soon-to-be ex-wife. "Call me as soon as you get there and call me as soon as you get to the airport. I'll know where you are the whole time." He turned back to the phone. "And if you double-cross me again, Van Owen, I promise I won't miss. Got it?" "I got it, Roland," he said. Roland grabbed the phone from Susan and ended the call. He handed her the phone and motioned toward the door. "Get out," he told Susan. Susan took a step in his direction while reaching for his face. Roland backed up. "Stay away from me," he said. She recoiled from his words and his tone of voice. "You've lost the right to touch me or kiss me. Just grab your blip and get the blip out." She headed for her luggage and looked back at her husband. "I'm sorry, Roland," she said. "Yeah, you are. By the way, you should know that once Van Owen is finished with you, he'll double-cross you the way he did me. And believe me, he'll have no problem killing you. I'm not saying he will. I'm just letting you know who you're dealing with. Just know that I won't be there to pick up the pieces when he dumps you." "Don't you love me anymore?" she cried. He shook his head. "No, I did once. I even gave you a second chance, something I almost never do. But then you decided to betray me. I don't associate with traitors, and that's what you are. Now go." She nodded her head and slowly walked out the door. A half-hour later, she called to let him know she was at Van Owen's condo. Another half-hour later, she called to say they were at the airport. "Goodbye, wife. Enjoy what's left of your worthless life." "What does that mean?" she asked. "You know the old saying about laying down with dogs? Just remember what I said." He ended the call and dialed Bill's number. "They're at the airport," he said when Bill answered. "Got 'em. I'll be in touch." Over the next day or so, Roland got regular updates about Van Owen and his wife. It seemed they were having a grand old time on the cruise. On the second day of their cruise, Roland went to a local bar and half-heartedly watched a game on the large television as he nursed his drink. A few people, including the bartender, tried to engage him in conversation, but quickly left him alone after he made it clear he had no desire for company. After an hour or so, his phone buzzed. He looked and saw it was a call from Bill. He answered and spoke to his friend. "What's up?" he asked. "Boss, your wife is in danger," Bill said. "What's going on?" he asked. "Just as you predicted. I overheard Van Owen talking with some guerrillas. He's taking her to an island now and I'm following in another boat. He intends to hand her over to them as a sex slave." "Do you know where they're going?" Roland asked. "Boss, there are only 700 islands in the Bahamas. But Van Owen let the cat out of the bag when he was talking to the guerrillas." "When is this handoff supposed to take place?" Roland asked. "From what I heard, in about 12 hours. There's just enough time for you to get here if you want to extract her." Roland hated what his wife did, but he couldn't live with himself if he let her get put into that situation, or worse yet, dead. There was no other choice. Van Owen had to die, and he would deal with Susan's betrayal later. "Text me the coordinates and line up transportation," Roland said. "Already done, boss. Details are on the way to you now." Roland smiled. That was one of the things he appreciated about Bill. Not only was he loyal, he knew how to plan ahead. "Thanks, Bill. I'll see you soon." "I'll be here," Bill said, ending the call. Roland put his phone away, paid his tab, and headed home. Once there, he went to the attic, where he kept his gear. He unlocked the large chest and opened it. There it was, his Thompson gun, covered and oiled, waiting for his touch. He picked it up and inspected it. Everything was still clean, oiled, and in good order. He grabbed a loaded drum and a large magazine. He figured 130 rounds should do the trick. If not, he was sure there would be other weapons lying around if it got to that point. He grabbed the rest of his gear and dressed for work. Once done, he headed out to a small landing strip where he knew a small Lear jet was waiting for him. He spoke with the pilot for a minute and gave him the coordinates Bill texted him along with an envelope of cash. A few minutes later, the plane was airborne. Roland examined the map Bill sent him and got a lay of the land. Although mostly uninhabited, the small island had a landing strip that was mostly used by smugglers and guerrillas. He studied the map carefully and had a good idea of what he would do. He went into the lavatory, finished applying his camouflage paint, and donned his fighting gear. He looked at himself in the mirror before he left and mentally prepared himself for the bloody work ahead. He double-checked himself and his gear and left the lavatory. Sometime later, he looked out at the darkness and could make out the island below him. Looking carefully, he could see what appeared to be a campfire. The jet began its approach and landed on the dirt strip. After the plane slowed to a stop, he opened the door. The pilot came into the cabin and looked at his passenger. Roland looked back at him. "Wait for my signal," he told the pilot, who acknowledged him with a nod of his head. Roland stepped off the plane to find Bill running up to him. "This way," Bill said, turning back the way he came. "Can't miss it. Van Owen has a nice fire going." "Saw that," Roland said quietly. "Stupid f***. I could see it 20 miles out." They quietly worked their way through the vegetation, mostly to help keep the rounds in the drum from rattling too much, and 10 minutes later, found themselves on the edge of the camp. Roland and Bill knelt down and looked the campsite over. Susan was naked and tied to the ground, her arms and legs spread wide. In addition to Van Owen, Roland spotted 3 guerrillas. Susan was crying and begging to be let go. "Please, Mike, don't do this. Don't I mean anything to you?" He laughed. "Yeah, you mean about $250,000 to me right now. Once the boss makes it here, we'll make the exchange. You for the other half of my bounty, and you'll be off to live your new life. And there's nothing your stupid, wimpy husband can do about it." The 3 guerrillas laughed in response. One of them stood over Susan and started unzipping his trousers. "Put that away, El Capitan wants her fresh." You know that." The gorilla zipped his pants back up, unhappy. Roland looked at Bill, who was holding his .45 caliber pistol, then consulted his watch. It was time to move. He gave Bill a hand signal, and the two moved out quietly. They approached the camp as Van Owen and the gorillas gathered around the fire. Roland motioned for Bill to stay behind him and take cover. Bill obeyed without question as Roland slowly moved into the camp. The four men heard Roland as he placed the weapon in automatic firing mode, which required two switches to be turned, one to take it off safe and another to place it in full auto mode. Without saying a word, he pulled the charging handle back, and before the gorillas could react, he unleashed several short bursts of automatic fire from the hip, sending the gorillas flying back. A couple of the gorillas managed to get some rounds off, but they missed Roland by a long shot. After the gorillas were dispatched, Roland placed the gun in his shoulder and took careful aim. Before Van Owen could react, Roland sent a 3-round burst at his head, effectively blowing it off. The whole incident took just a few seconds. Roland looked around to make sure everything was secure. That's when he noticed Susan. One of the shots fired by the gorillas managed to hit her in the side. Bill knelt over her as Roland watched. She looked up at Roland with sad eyes. "I'm sorry," she wheezed. Soon her eyes glazed over. Roland had seen enough death to know she was gone. Bill checked for a pulse and looked up at him. "She's dead, boss. Do we take her back with us?" Roland hawked up a glob of phlegm and spit on her face. He thought for a moment as he observed the sputum covering her left eye, then shook his head. "No. El Capitan is expecting to pick up a blonde. I think he should get what he paid for, don't you?" "Damn, you're cold-blooded, boss," Bill said. Roland chuckled at that. "You know it, my old friend. Come on, let's get her over to the fire. She wanted to be with Van Owen. She can burn with him, forever." They dragged her lifeless form to the fire, and Roland used the wads of cash to stoke the fire, handing one bundle of bills to his friend. "Consider it a bonus," he said as Bill pocketed the cash. They put Susan's nude body on the growing fire, followed by Van Owen and the 3 dead gorillas. "Help me police up this brass. No sense in leaving too many clues." After he and Bill collected the spent .45 caliber shell casings, they headed out to the plane. The pilot was waiting for them and took off as soon as they entered the cabin. Bill watched his old friend as the plane headed back to the States. Roland sat in a back seat looking out the window, drinking a beer while smoking a fairly expensive cigar. Bill had seen this many times before and knew better than to interrupt, at least until the first beer was finished. "Mind if I join you?" Bill asked when Roland opened his second beer. Roland handed him a beer and a cigar and motioned for him to sit. "We've been through some shit, haven't we?" Bill asked. Roland nodded his head as he looked out the window. "You know, I'm really sorry about all this." "I know, Bill. I warned her. God damn it all, I warned her this would happen. Stupid blip just wouldn't listen." "So what do we do now? You think about going back in the business?" "Nah, I'm getting too old for this shit. Too sentimental." "Sentimental? You? Sentimental? That'll be the day," Bill asked. "Yeah. You notice I didn't even cut anyone's head off?" "I noticed that," Bill said. Roland was known for decapitating his defeated enemies as a way of striking fear in the hearts of anyone who might oppose him. "I couldn't do it. Even after everything that cheating woman did, I just couldn't bring myself to do it." Bill nodded his head in understanding. "I understand, boss. I remember a time when I would have skinned her alive and played with her bones like tinker toys. Whatever you decide to do, you know I'll always have your back." Roland looked at him and raised his beer. Bill returned the gesture, touching his beer to Roland's. "I know, Bill. You always have had my back. You and I are the last of our team. You know that, right?" "Yeah, boss, I do," Bill replied. "Someone has to survive. Someone has to be around to tell the tale." "You're not going to do what I think you are you? Please don't do that," Bill asked. "No. Besides, you know old mercenaries like us never die." Yeah, they just go to hell to regroup. Roland laughed and took another drink from his beer. You got that right, he said. He didn't speak again for a couple minutes. We're going to have to put on a good act for the next few weeks, you know. Yeah, I know. Some people are going to want to know what the hell happened. But we don't know anything, do we? Roland asked. Not a goddamn thing. I'll make sure the pilot understands as well. Roland nodded his head. It's amazing how much silence money can buy, along with the threat of a bullet in the back of the head. After the plane landed, Roland gave the pilot another envelope of cash, and Bill stayed behind to ensure the pilot's continued silence. Roland drove home, cleaned up, and put his gear away, hoping he would never have to use it again. Exhausted, he finally fell asleep in the bed he once shared with Susan. Roland went about his business as normal, putting Susan behind him as much as possible. When the ship reported that she was not on board, he filed a missing persons report and put on a good act for the officers who eventually questioned him. They accepted his story and left, wishing him good luck. The firm she and Van Owen worked for also questioned him about their absence. He was able to put them off successfully and managed to get a few digs into them as well. Surely they knew about her fling with Van Owen, right? He waited patiently, and 1 year after Susan left for her cruise, he filed for divorce on the grounds of abandonment. 60 days later, the divorce was final, and Roland was a free man. Still stinging from her actions, however, Roland refused to consider another exclusive relationship with a woman. Things went on as normal for Roland until a week before Christmas, when he heard a knock on his door. He looked through the peephole and saw 2 men in dark suits and glasses. Feds, he thought. He opened the door, and one pulled out a set of credentials. Roland Waters? The man asked. Yes? Special Agent Smith, this is Agent Jones, FBI. Can we come in and talk for a moment? Sure, Roland said, letting the 2 men inside. They looked around the house as they came in. Please have a seat. May I get you something to drink? Thanks, but that won't be necessary, Smith said, taking a seat in Roland's favorite recliner. What can I do for you, gentlemen? Roland asked. Have you ever been to the Bahamas? Smith asked. Roland shook his head. No. Why? What about your wife? He asked. Ex-wife. She left me over a year ago with her lover, and I have no idea where they went. Would that be one Michael Van Owen? Smith asked. Yes, Roland said. We received a tip from Bahamian authorities who found their remains on one of their islands. They've been identified as being your ex-wife and Mr. Van Owen. Yes. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Mr. Waters? No. Nothing. Why? Just wrapping up some loose ends, that's all. We've had Van Owen on our radar for a while. Then he suddenly disappeared. It seems he was involved in human trafficking while pretending to be an upright citizen. From what we could tell, it looks like he may have had a disagreement with one of his business associates. Disagreement? What kind of disagreement? And what does Susan have to do with all this? Please, Mr. Waters, don't insult our intelligence. We know all about you. You're something of a legend in certain parts of the world with your Thompson gun, you know. Personally, I can't imagine why anyone would want to carry a noisy old relic like that, but I guess to each his own. You don't believe I had anything to do with what happened to Susan, do you? Roland asked. No, your ex-wife was shot with a 9mm, not a .45. There were 4 other bodies found, including Van Owen, and they all appear to have been shot with a .45. That's a fairly common round, though, and we're pretty certain it wasn't you. And why's that? Roland asked. All the brass was policed from the area, and none of the victims were decapitated. I see, Roland replied. We just wanted to make sure you hadn't decided to go back into business. You haven't, have you? No, not back into that business. Getting too old to be out trudging through some jungle somewhere? Good, because I'd sure hate it if I had to arrest you. Yeah, me too, Roland said. Smith and Jones stood up and shook Roland's hand. That's all we have for now. If you hear anything, give me a call," he added, giving Roland a card. "Thanks, I will," Roland said. Smith nodded his head. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Waters," he said as they left. He considered calling Bill, but his friend beat him to the punch. "Hey, boss, I wanted to give you a heads up." "I know. They just left here." "They spoke to me as well. I told them nothing. They said they were just wrapping things up." "Told me the same thing." "Hey, why don't we go have a beer?" Bill agreed, and the two men met that night at a local bar. Their beers had just been placed on the table when a song began playing on the jukebox. Roland was a warrior from the land of the midnight sun, with a Thompson gun for hire, fighting to be done. "Merry Christmas," Roland said as song he hated so much played on. "Merry Christmas, boss," Bill said, lifting his beer. Roland looked around the bar, wondering if he could see who played the song. In one corner sat two men in dark suits. One of them smiled a crooked smile as he raised a beer in his direction. Agent Smith. Roland smiled back as he raised a middle finger with one hand while lifting his beer in the other. Smith laughed and drank his beer. When Smith and Jones finished their beer, they came to Roland's table. "Well, well, the last two surviving members of Strike Force Charlie having a beer together. That is what you used to call yourself back in the day, wasn't it?" he asked. "Just two old friends sharing a beer. Nothing illegal about that, is there? It is the Christmas season after all." "Of course not," Smith said. He pulled up a chair and sat next to Roland. He pointed to a very attractive waitress wearing a short skirt. "You know, she's been checking you out ever since you two walked in here." "Yeah, so?" "Probably checking this out," he added, pointing to the scar on his face. "No, I don't think so." "What do you think?" he asked, looking up at Jones. Jones shook his head. "No, definitely not," Jones said. Smith looked back at Roland. "No, she's got the hots for you. I'm a federal agent. I can tell these things, you know. Maybe if you play your cards right, you can get a piece of that this evening. It's okay. We checked her out. Her name's Maria. She's very single, and she's not working for the Russians." Jones snickered at that. Roland understood the reference. "You're just a regular comedian, aren't you? Maybe she's working for you," Roland said. Smith shook his head. "Nah, too pretty. Trust me, she wants you. Better yet, you won't need to ask for lawyers, guns, or money if you hook up with her." He chuckled as he stood up and patted Roland's shoulder. "Keep up the good fight, Roland, and Merry Christmas." Roland laughed. "Merry Christmas to you too, Jones." "Thanks," Jones said as they walked out of the bar. Roland and Bill watched as the two agents walked out of the bar. "Well, what do you think?" Bill asked. "Just two friends having a beer," he said. His eyes wandered to the pretty young waitress. As he watched, she looked at him several times with a smile on her face. "To answer your question, though, I think I just might introduce myself to Maria." Bill laughed as he finished his beer. "You dog, I'm going home while I can still walk. You have a good evening." "I will. Talk to you later." Bill headed out of the bar, and Roland turned his gaze back to Maria. "Merry Christmas to me," he said to no one in particular, as he motioned for her to come to his table. Yes, he decided, it would be a Merry Christmas with her in his bed. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.